All right, everyone, the time is pretty much here. Terra Invicta is about to go into early access. I had a huge amount of fun with this game during the demo, and now it's about to go to early access, and I think it's early access done well. The game is basically complete, and all that is really left to do is a little bit of balancing around the stats and adding more scenarios. You've got the modern day scenario at release. Which is the 2022 scenario. They're also planning to add a Cold War one, which I believe will come later. So they've unlocked everything. If you compare it to the demo that came out for TI, they've removed the time limit, they've removed the limit on content, and they've allowed you to choose your own faction. And I've been thinking about this for a while, because in Terra Invicta, you can play one of a collection of human factions. They initially start, in terms of their gameplay, quite similar, but they have diametrically opposed goals in some cases. So, for example, during the demo, you played the Resistance, whose goal was to defend Earth from alien influence, but otherwise leave nations to their own devices. But you can also play the Servants, who believe that they should worship the aliens to support them by any means necessary, which obviously makes it a bit of an easier campaign. Project Exodus, who I have a soft spot for, whose idea is that we should respond to the alien arrival by building a giant spaceship and leaving. But for this playthrough, I think I am going to play Humanity First and channel my best inner 40k player. Humanity First are a faction who just believe in the suffer not the Xenos to live kind of line. They believe that the aliens represent a threat that needs to be destroyed, and that we shouldn't tolerate people on Earth who support the aliens, factions like the Servants and the Protectorate. Playing Humanity First is a recipe for conflict with other nations, and I think it goes hand in hand with the sort of strategy I'm planning to go with on the campaign map. So Humanity First it is. You can customize your faction, but I'm not going to. I'm going to use the defaults. This is exciting. Let's jump into it. Alright, so here we are. This is the early access version of Terra Invicta. Last time you saw me playing it was the demo version, and it feels good to have the shackles off, honestly. The game has been tremendously refined from the demo, and more importantly, the time limit to the game has been removed, and all of the content locks have been removed as well. Because while there was a demo for Terra Invicta that allowed you to play the first 7 years of the game, a lot of the content around the story and whatnot was locked. So no matter how far you got, you couldn't unlock it, and all of those limits are now removed. So here we are, back in the game again. So straight off the bat, let's inspect the start that we've got. I've clicked through the opening introductions, and I've renamed my 2 starting councillors, so let's have a look at them. Remember, at the start of the game, you don't really control any nations. You have no importance, you have very few resources. All you have is a couple of these councillors, agents who work for you, who will level up and develop over time. So I've got Vincinar Phoenix, named after one of my long-time patrons. Vincinar's pretty good, at least as a starting character. His weakness is he's not particularly loyal, but he's got great persuasion, and persuasion's the most important stat at game start, followed by administration. Decent investigation, espionage. His weakness is he's got a limited mission set, but he does have control nation. His traits are government, quick learner, which means he will level faster. Fantastic trait on a character at the start of the game. That 20% is going to save me a lot of experience points over time. And he's got media darling, which means he's generating 7 influence a month, and he's got additional persuasion in countries with at least 6 democracy value. But he's got -4 espionage when he's detected, because he's such a media darling. That means at the moment, I think our monthly income is 30, so a reasonable chunk of that, 7.5 of that is coming from Vincinar. He's generating that influence, which is going to be really important to us. Nero is also a long-time patron of the channel. He is affluent, which means he's giving us a little bit of money. He is a cynic, which makes his maximum loyalty lower, but makes it better in investigation. He is inflexible, so he'll level slower, and he is an opinion leader for monthly influence. So together, a third of our influence is being produced by our councillors, which is a nice start. He's got -2 espionage when he's detected, and +2 persuasion in nations where democracy is at least 6. So media darling is basically the leveled up version of this opinion leader trait. So they're both pretty good at persuading people in countries where there's a reasonably high democracy value. There's also a bunch of individuals ready for recruitment. What we're going to want is to grab probably a high persuasion, decent administration character first, and then pick up characters that give us a little bit more of a mission set. So I'm looking, as soon as we hit 60 influence, we'll come back here and pick the best one that we can at the time. Great. So, aliens have crash landed somewhere on the planet. I'm not sure exactly where, but let's talk about what we're going to do first. The game is about to tell us that we should go investigate the alien crash site. We're humanity first, so we want it. There it is. It looks like it's in Pakistan. There it is. UFO crash down site. We could go and look at that site straight away, but instead we're going to do what you're meant to do at the start of Terra Invicta, just a little bit faster, and that's take control of countries. The best way to get resources in this game at game start is to take control and influence countries, and rather than explaining the concept in like vague abstract terms, I can point you to a video I did on the topic, but we're going to just basically learn by doing. In the demo, I did what was called the EU strategy, or I call it that, where basically the goal was to take over as many EU countries as possible, as quickly as possible, join them together into one super European Union megastate and use that as the basis for your scientific research. Europe is pretty good for that. It's got a lot of scientific output. When you join it together as the European Union, it's relatively easy to administer. It's got some nuclear weapons, some military power, especially if you join the UK back to the European Union. Sorry, Brits. But that gives you a second army, a decent navy, and more nuclear weapons. It's just a good power to start with. But there's a couple of different strategies you can open with. The EU is still very, very strong. They've nerfed it. They have brought in some changes to the game that make it less easy to unify the EU than it was before, and makes it basically a slower burn strategy, but it's still very, very strong. Russia is a strong opener. China is the strongest opener in many ways, but it's the hardest to get. Strategies involving, say, India and Japan, where you try and stitch together middling but major powers. So India gives you some nuclear weapons and a very large economy. Japan adds another 50% to that economy and gives you a good science income. There's lots of ways that you can open the game. But we're going to try for the USA, because we did Europe last time. We did Europe in the demo, and we're going to open with the United States. My logic here is that the United States, even though it doesn't produce as much GDP as China, begins the game producing more boost, more mission control, and more science output, has a lot more nuclear weapons, which is primarily important because we don't want other people who we don't like to get control of the American nuclear arsenal, and because the US military is the strongest in the world. So if we were able to take political control of the United States, we can basically spread freedom to the rest of the world in order to help our further expansion. Now, the US is too rich to open by just influencing it directly, so we're going to have to get bonuses. And the way we're going to do those is by getting a bonus from taking over neighboring countries. So the opening moves are going to be Mexico and Canada. So let's jump into the game and move ahead, confirming assignments now. So let's have a look at our odds. We've got 35%, and remember, the way this works in this game is you can spend resources in order to increase your chances of taking over a country. So Vincinar has +7 for just being 7 persuasion. He gets 3 for media darling. I can get spend 2 influence to boost it by 2, so 57% chance in Mexico. That's a pretty good idea, I think. Not Mexico, in Canada. We're going to have a lower chance in Mexico than in Canada because Mexico does not have it's just under the cutoff that we need in order to get the bonus. So we could do a public campaign in the United States to improve our odds there, but it might be worth doing one quickly in Mexico. That, or grabbing a second Canadian control point, or taking a gamble at a second Canadian control point. I might do just that. I'm going to inspect the rest of the map. I'm going to answer whatever that is, beeping in the background, and then we're going to play our first turn. Okay, so we have just grabbed the 2 points in Canada, so that's good. We've got a good start in Canada. Canada's an okay country, we'll talk about it in a bit. But first, the UN Security Council is meeting. So basically, the council gets together, and surprise, surprise, China, Russia, and the United States are all pointing fingers at each other, trying to accuse each other of hiding information about the aliens. And humanity first has a choice to make. We can remain in the shadows. This means that it's less likely that other factions will discover us, learn about us, and as a result, it's less likely that if they don't like us, they'll be able to point their counselors at us and cause us problems. We can sort of quietly steer support in the UN towards humanity first. That gives us some influence, and a small public opinion boost around the world as we win some people over. But a lot of intel on us will be revealed, and deliver their manifest to the world is us basically standing up and explaining why we believe all Xenos should be destroyed in order to preserve humanity, and of course that is what we are going to do. Okay, so we've encountered other factions. So these are the other factions who have chosen to go out and declare their case publicly, and as a result they get discovered straight away. The Resistance is the default faction in many ways. They're the ones people who played the demo will have played. Basically, their idea is that Earth should be preserved and defended, but the aliens aren't inherently bad except insofar as they directly try and mess with Earth, and also there's no unifying ideology. The nations of Earth should pretty much be left to do their own thing. And it looks like no one else has declared themselves publicly. Interesting. So we have a bunch of influence now, so we can go hire another character. And what I'm interested here for the initial scramble is probably more high influence and influence generating characters, and then to try and pick someone a little more like the spy here. So people who are command heavy and have good missions like coup d'etats, assassinations, etc. for us to use next. That's as our fourth counselor. So 3 persuaders is probably a good idea at the start. This executive here generates a crap ton of influence and is 30 years old. That's from the Megastar trait, so 12 influence per month would increase our influence from 30 to 40, so a very significant lift. This judge here has the government trait and media darling, which means this judge here, even though she's a bit older, would give us a persuasion of 9 to use straight away, which I'm tempted to do. This journalist has ethical. Ethical is terrible. So ethical means +1 persuasion in nations which have low inequality, but -1 permanent loyalty for every atrocity that your faction commits. And we're humanity first. Like, it's gonna happen. So yeah, we'll pass on the ethical criminal journalist and instead hire this judge, I think. And then we'll configure Canada. Canada's initial priorities, and we'll see if we can buy anyone an organization. Looks like there's only this one's available, which is good for 209 money, but we don't quite have 209 money yet. That's okay. So once you've started to take control of nations, you can begin allocating their budgets between economy, welfare, knowledge, unity, military, spoils, funding, spaceflight program, build army, and nuclear weapons. Obviously, Canada does not need nuclear weapons. Our goal is to take over the United States, and they have enough to basically end the world, so no reason for Canada to start rolling out the nukes. For the same reason, Canada probably doesn't need an army. I will generate a custom priority list for other countries we take over, but for now let's just configure it this way. Does Canada need a spaceflight program? Probably not. That's going to come from other countries. Right now we're not going to prioritize funding, and we're not going to prioritize spoils. Spoils is corruption and looting. That little anger thing means basically the wealthy people, the elite in a country, want you to have at least a certain amount of spoils, because they get to put money in their pocket too. Spoils is corruption. Spoils is economic activity where externalities are not counted for. It's just generally, it's good for putting money in your pocket very, very quickly. It does nothing sustainable. It's just every time it completes, you get money, and that's it. Military, we don't need to invest in the Canadian military. We're going to use the US military. We'll put a little bit into unity to keep the nation cohesive, but it's okay at the moment. Knowledge, welfare, the economy, cool. So these can all get a little bit of a priority to start with. But mostly what I want out of here, actually we will need a spaceflight program for this, won't we? I want a spaceflight program so I can then create mission control here. Basically, I want Canada to be a nation that controls our satellites and our space stations. Mission control is built in countries using investment points. Canada has 12.2 per turn. So if we manage to complete this spaceflight program by, say, getting this priority up to 50, then we can then build mission control, which will let us build space stations, which is kind of cool. America starts with 6 mission control, but I have other things I want America to be spending money on than expanding that, so Canada's going to need a spaceflight program. Once we take over the 3rd slot, we can control all of this, and we'll figure out how much spending we need to do on the economy, welfare, and knowledge in order to keep Canada stable, keep Canada happy, keep Canada growing. But really, I want to use Canada to produce mission control for a spaceflight program, which means the next goal is Mexico. So give me a moment to think about what balance of takeover and whatnot I'm going to do there. And as soon as I get to 60 influence, I'm going to hire one more counselor. So give me a second. Alright, so I've decided to investigate the alien crash site because that gives us a little bit of a boost in terms of resources immediately, which means we can go and hire another counselor. And we've unlocked a story research, which is research alien signatures. So what do we need next? We've got 3 high persuasive individuals, which means what we're going to really need next is someone who knows how to shoot things and take over nations. I'm looking at this commando. So the good missions here. We need someone who can do Purge, which is based on espionage. This is taking over individual control points. Coup d'etat is about throwing people out entirely, which is also useful. Investigate, steal project, assault asset, all of this is useful, and he's relatively cheap. He doesn't have any good traits, which is a bit of a downside. I'm not seeing anyone else who's a good contender for that sort of role, though. This spy has coup d'etat but doesn't have the shooty missions. We can always fire people later. And if we grab this operative now, what can he do in the meantime? Because he doesn't have like public campaign or anything particularly useful. He doesn't produce any resources. All he can really do is shooty stuff. Alright, sorry, we're back after I had to answer the door. And I was staring at recruiting the recruit council list for ages because having looked through these characters, none of them look particularly impressive. The commando is useful, but yeah, the commando is useful but has 0 administration, no bonuses, and wouldn't be useful immediately for just about anything because we're not going to be crackdown or purging. I mean, we might do some purge, crackdown work maybe, but what's he going to do the rest of the time? So I'm actually considering, there's this executive megastar over here, who is affluent, inscrutable, megastar, earthbound, so not a huge amount of long-term benefit here. Can do purge and crackdown, but he's not very good at it. But most importantly, can do control nation, can do advise, and gives a really high influence income. So that's a potential one. I'm really looking for someone who can do public campaign with a decent amount of persuasion. So this spy has no income, but can do public campaign, coup d'etat. Stats are pretty trash. I guess he's okay at purging and whatnot. He's 61. Like he's going to cark it at some point. So he's not the sort of person who I want to level up. I mean, really, I almost want to wait for. This hacker is decent, but has no ability to purge, and we can add on. What about this hacker? Ethical is a problem. Quick learner is good. Enemy of the state, Russia. Hometown, United States of America. Cannot perform actions in the United States. So we'd only be able to use Mr. Rogers here, operating outside the United States. But he can do public campaign. He can do crackdowns. He is affluent, generates a little bit of money, a little bit of research. I mean, there's a decent chance that I throw whoever it is that I hire here out in the long run anyway. Because of all my counselors at the moment, I mean, unfortunately, this judge is not very well placed in order to do crackdowns. Yeah, I might have a little bit of a refresh on some of my counselors at some point anyway. The question is, how soon do I get rid of any of them? The really good one is Vincenar. Vincenar's pretty damn good. Media Darling, 7 Persuasion, Control Nation, Advise, Stabilize. We can use Stabilize. We can eventually level up Command, so we can go like Persuasion, Command, Admin. And Vincenar's a quick learner, which makes that more practical. Nero, I think, is also decent, because Nero, if nothing else, is a public campaigner. The crackdown isn't great at Investigation 3, but you know, it is what it is. Really, I want both someone who can assault location, so I want like a commando, and I want someone who can do either crackdown or coup. I need someone who can break into enemy territory. Now, Our judge is okay at crackdown, which is how you prepare a point to take it over. So if a point is defended, and we'll talk about defending points later, cracking it down removes its defense, and then it's easier to go in and purge it, which is what takes control of that position. Or you can just coup the entire country, overthrow the government, and go from there. So this recruitment is actually kind of difficult. I'm trying to balance the fact that I want someone who is useful right now and gives good income right now, and I also want someone who's got some usefulness later on as well. This scientist produces a lot of research, accelerates our research, but isn't particularly useful at anything right now. Administration 4, plus 2%, plus 15% social, but influence income would increase our research income by about 10%, although I'm hoping we'll break into the United States. This is tough. This is tough. Because what are we going to do with Max most of the time? I guess what we need to do is we need to get Max on board and start leveling him up. Because if we don't pick up someone who has assault alien asset or assault enemy space asset, coup, purge, etc., it just means he's not going to have much to do most of the time, which is unfortunate, and he provides no income. But he is cheap, so we can always get rid of him. So we'll bring Max on board. How's that? Alright, so we've got 2 points in Canada, so no one else can gazump us in Canada. I think now we need to grab the remaining Mexico points, probably need to grab the remaining Canada point, and start public campaigning in the United States. So let me set that up. And cough. Alright, so we've played a pair of extra turns. The position we are now in is that we have 3 of Mexico's 4 control points. We've got 2 of Canada's points. And what we're going to do now to stop the Academy, who is also playing... The AI has learned since the beta to play for big objectives. So you'll see, for example, individual nations trying to concentrate over certain geographical prizes, framing them. So it looks like, for example... Institute. Already, North Korea is currently run by the Initiative. These are the guys who are the corpos that are trying to make a profit out of the alien invasion. Good on them. The Protectorate is starting to go into Central Asia. We've got Exodus starting to establish themselves, along with the Resistance in Eastern Europe. No one's gone for Russia yet or for Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is one of those countries that I'd consider pinching off if I'm able to establish myself in America. What you do with Kazakhstan is home to Baikonur. The Baikonur Cosmodrome. This produces an ungodly amount of boost. Kazakhstan produces 2.5 boost per month, which is actually more than the United States produces. The problem is, normally Kazakhstan is in the Eurasian Union with Russia, which means that Russia actually ends up swallowing up a vast majority of Kazakhstan's boost income. So you want Kazakhstan either if you are going for Russia, in which case you can then absorb Kazakhstan into a Eurasian Union, or you take Kazakhstan itself and then you remove it from the Eurasian Union and ally it to whatever your main country is, China, India, whoever you can ally it to in order to prevent the AI in charge of Russia from just being like, you're taking my boost away, I'm going to invade Kazakhstan, bro. So we will do a little guard on Mexico with Protect Interest. This costs 20 influence, but it gives you a period of protection. I think it's 12, how long is it? Until April 2023. So it looks like it is a year of protection, during which it's much harder to assault your points. So this again encourages the game to stabilize past a certain point. If you only control a few nations, it's cost effective to defend interests, hold on to those positions. If you try and spread everywhere, then you're going to spend all of your influence trying to dig yourself in, and you're always going to be vulnerable around the edges. Nero, meanwhile, has been public campaigning. We're trying to build up opinion of us in the United States, so we'll keep doing that. What's our monthly cash income? It's not much, and we want to be able to buy more organizations, so we'll do that. We'll stabilize nation Mexico. This lowers unrest, just so we can get a few more resources out of Mexico. And what we will do in the meantime in Mexico is we'll just set everything down. So what have we got here? We've got polarized, so we'll do a little bit of unity. We'll try and fix Mexico a little bit, although we may end up abandoning it, to be honest. Again, just like everyone else who we take over that is in the United States, we're not really going to fund the military. We won't really fund spoils, because I don't want to ruin Mexico, although it'd be a nice way to get some money. How much we get? 50 cash for every completion, 9 investment points per month. So we get an extra 50 cash a month, which would multiply our cash income by a significant amount. So I might just for the start here up spoils to like 15%. Funding we're not going to do in Mexico, it's not going to get us much return. So we'll lower that. Spaceflight program's a possibility, army is not, and nuclear weapons are not. Note the AI has its own priorities and it's deciding its spending on the economy and welfare, etc. So I kind of have to adjust for that. So what I'll do is I'll go down to 15% spoils. I'll lower spending on the space program to about that. So we're going to have economy, welfare. We need to increase welfare a bit to stop an increase in inequality. Although again, I'm not sure how long I'll hold on to Mexico. If I get to the United States, I'd be tempted to let go of Mexico. You can click Abandon Nation here. That abandons your points, which means you don't have to pay control cap upkeep on them, and hand Mexico over to someone else. Maybe, but for now, let's extract some cash out of it. We do want to fix the nation long term, but just for these first couple of months, a little bit of spoils so that we can afford purchasing some organizations might be a good idea. And then Vincinar is the controller. So what is your odds on the United States? Well, we're getting up to about a 7% chance to claim a spot. That's not good enough yet. What would it be if we wanted to grab a place in Kazakhstan? 56%. So I might just go reserve some spots in Kazakhstan to extract some boost income. If nothing else, removing Kazakhstan from the Eurasian Union will hamstring whoever it happens to be who goes for Russia. We do need to take full control of Kazakhstan and change its relations, though. If you are rivaled with a country and you control that country, so if you control two countries that hate each other, it's harder to gain popularity and take over control points in the other. So if you control all of Russia, it is harder to campaign and gain influence in the United States. So I might either grab some Kazakhstan or secure a future foothold in France, which is a potential break into the European Union later on. But we're not going to be able to control all of France. You know what? I think we're going to go Kazakhstan. We're going to go Kazakhstan. Alright, let's go.
Making things safe.
Okay, so we've defended interests. Next should be public campaign, advisory team. Okay, so do we want investment in military and build army, investment in welfare and knowledge, spaceflight program and boost, or 10% economy? I think international aid. You'll be spending a lot on welfare and knowledge, especially knowledge. So we'll do that. We're stabilizing Mexico. We've increased our popularity in the United States to 19%, which makes us the third most popular faction after the Resistance and Undecided. So I'll take that. Vincinar, you're going to get me... Oh, we've spotted an alien fleet. Okay, so there we are. So there is no stealth in space in Terra Invicta, basically. Terra Invicta believes that it's very hard to hide against the background of space, which has, you know, extraordinarily low ambient temperatures and all of that. So we have been able to spot an alien ship coming in. We've tentatively identified it as Victor 1, which means it's the first alien ship. So Victor Alien 1, the first alien flotilla that you have detected. And it is an Eternal Harmony class gunship, which has 385 total Delta V in storage, of which it has 222 available. So that's a lot. When you start to see human ships designed later, like you'll be designing ships with like 5, 6 Delta V. Delta V is like the total, it's your total fuel supply measured in how much you can net change your velocity. It's basically your range coupled with your combat endurance. This is an alien ship. We know basically nothing about it. All we know is that we believe it is a transport ship. It's about 4,000 tons. It has a huge amount of Delta V available to it, and everything is unknown except for the fact that we believe they use fusion torch engines. I don't know how we know that at this stage, but there it is. So it's transferring to low Earth orbit, and considering that at the start of the game, there is nothing in orbit of Earth other than the Tiangong station and the ISS, and only the ISS has modules. The nations which control these at the start of the game is fixed, by the way. The Academy always controls the ISS at game start, which is a little bit of an advantage for them. But the Academy is a hard faction generally for other reasons. So if you're looking for a challenge game... Oh, we didn't control Kazakhstan. Very disappointing. Alright, well, that was in fact disappointing. Let's keep campaigning in the United States. Let's just quickly check if there's any organizations we can pick up. No, because we don't have enough influence to afford them generally, so we would like to save up some influence. Looks like we're getting better odds in the United States. Yeah, so we're now up to 15% chance. So that's starting to get to the point where I'd be willing to roll the dice. I'm willing to invest like 1 influence per person in Kazakhstan and see if we can double up here, because it'd be a nice pick. I'll even invest 2 there and keep stabilizing here while we public campaign in the United States. And we've encountered the servants. The servants are our sworn enemies. They are terrible. They are evil. They are led by basically a whack job named Judith Howe. This is me partly role-playing, but, you know, you can play the servants if you decide they're right. Anyway, Judith Howe is a bit of a religious whack job in the sense that she thinks that the aliens are holy and that, as she says, they are here to cleanse our sick world. They are saviors. All who oppose them are enemies of the future. So the servants will actively try and help the aliens in any way they can. They believe humanity should serve the aliens proactively. So, yeah.
The trick is not to look directly.
Alright, we finished Skywatch and we contributed the most. So I haven't talked about the research system in the main game yet. I've talked about it in the demo playthrough. Basically, there are the top level here are shared researchers, so everyone contributes. Whoever contributes the most gets to pick the next research that goes into a slot, and once it's unlocked, everyone gets that technology. But these are scientific researchers, right? They're big conceptual pieces of research. They all unlock individual engineering projects, which actually let you design and build individual modules or ship weapons or things like that. The more you contribute to the top level research, the quicker and more likely you are to unlock the potential projects, which are on this bottom line, that sit underneath it. So we'll just switch this to alien signatures. This is our personal one. So we research this, no one else gets it, just us. And we get to pick what the next thing we research is. We can either go Deep Systems, Skywatch, or Advanced Chemical Rocketry. They're both good. Is our primary enemy over here Academy? Our primary enemy over here is Academy, so far. Yeah. So we're going to go Deep Systems, Skywatch, because I know from past experience that this technology has some special events associated with it. A lot of technologies in this game have events associated with them. So we're stabilizing Mexico. Small benefit to public opinion in the United States, but that's okay. One positioning. Okay, so we've locked down Kazakhstan. No one else is going to be able to take it over, but at the same time, we haven't taken it over yet. But we need the executive in Kazakhstan to be able to pull it out of the Eurasian Union. So, how about... Sahiba stays there. We'll rename people after episode 1, I suspect. And we'll have Vincenar. Is it worth rolling dice at like 10%? I don't think that's quite worth rolling a dice yet. Although maybe it is. Maybe just speeding up... Oh no, what we should do is we should close out Canada. Because that'll give us an extra bonus in the United States. Basically, everything here is about farming bonuses to influence in the United States. Mexico is down to strife. We want to get this as low as possible in order to increase incomes, revenues, etc. So we'll confirm that.
Things are cooling off. Public opinion remains
Ouch, that hurts. Okay, mission to space is unlocked, so we can now research other technologies, and this also, as a technology, allows you to build space stations. Oh, we didn't do well that turn. We did not do well. Alright, so we're going to need to use influence in order to take Kazakhstan out of the Union in order to get access to all of its boost income. But other than that, that was a pretty terrible turn. Victor 1 is now in orbit. We've researched alien signatures. This lets us now detect alien abductions, because it's an alien game. There are going to be abductions. There is no doubt extraterrestrial life has touched down on Earth. There are many questions regarding its origin, its species, its intent. Those have to wait. All that matters now is finding it. Cross-referencing reports of unusual events, vicinity of landing sites, etc. So, alien life survived the crash, exited the area. It is now at large on Earth. There are missing animals and missing people. So now we need to investigate the alien. We need to investigate alien abductions, and we need to salvage some alien technology. But there's no easy way for us to do that straight out the gate. I'm going to go back to management research, which increases our total management cap, which is a priority for us. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to do a little bit of an inventory of the world and be right back. Alright, so one thing I like to do in the early game is trace around and see where nations are established, or where factions are establishing their power bases. The AI is pretty good in this game in choosing to basically build a power base, and you can sort of see where they're starting to consolidate. The AI knows what it's doing a lot of the time and tries to run for key objectives. And one thing you want to make sure of as a faction like Humanity First, in particular, but indeed any faction, is that any group directly opposed to your views doesn't end up entrenched somewhere with nuclear weapons. That's the big no-no. Unfortunately, the Servants have already landed 3 of the control points in the UK. The Servants are our sworn enemies. If you imagine there's a spectrum of how much you like or hate the aliens, Humanity First is at the maximum hate side of the spectrum, and the Servants are at the maximum like the alien side of the spectrum. And at those extremes, the AI is much more aggressive and more likely to do anything it takes in order to further their objectives. So now the Servants have access to the British Army, 1st Division of the British Army, which means they can invade people. So the AI having an army does matter. And they have 2 nuclear strategic barrages. And nukes in this game are not to be messed with. They do tremendous amounts of... You can destroy the Earth pretty well if you use the entire nuclear arsenal of something like the United States or Russia. Britain, with its 2 barrages, that's a problem, but it's not an insurmountable problem. But ideally, you'd want to throw the Servants out of the UK at some point. But the Servants are basing themselves there. The resistance is starting to build up in Poland and Eastern Europe. Over here, we've got the Academy. The nerds, the Academy, the ones who want to basically make peace with the aliens hand in hand as equals, they've taken over Japan and 3 of the 4 spots in the Republic of Korea, South Korea. So they're going to have really good science income, they're going to have a good economy to build on. They don't have a huge amount of military power. The ROK has got a little bit of military strength, and the Japanese start with investments in an army and a navy, but they don't start with an army and a navy. They just start with very good mil-tech. So a good economic base for the Academy to work from. The Initiative, the ones who are trying to make profit, they actually grabbed North Korea early, so they have a nuclear barrage. Good on them, and they have an army, but it is an army with a tech level of 2.8. That's a T-34. So North Korea starts with the most outdated army in the game. No one's grabbed anything in China or India, but the Protectorate, so the ones who want to sort of kowtow to the aliens, not worship them, but, you know, basically bend over. Yeah, they've taken over Pakistan, so they again have access to 2 nuclear weapons. So we're starting to see a division between the haves and the have-nots. The Servants have access to nukes, the Initiative has access to nukes, the Protectorate has access to nukes, the Academy does not have nukes, but probably has the largest economy of everyone, including myself at the moment. They're probably the wealthiest faction on the planet. And Protectorate's also spreading around as well, but we're putting everything into this campaign against the United States. So there we are. That's the state of the world as we enter December 2022. Okay, and as we run the turn, here is one of the best researchers in the game. Well, one of the most important early researchers in the game has unlocked. It's called Clandestine Cells. It lets you get an extra counselor. And since counselors do all your actions for you, well, it should be a little bit of a no-brainer to aim for it. The Academy is out competing us on Deep System Skywatch, which is ironic, so we're going to let them finish that technology for us, and we're going to put 100% of our research into finishing this as soon as possible so that we can fill this 5th slot. Because there's a lot of things that we are currently missing in our lineup in terms of missions, and it would be quicker to hire someone new than to fire and replace. So there we go. So Nero wants to continue public campaigning. We're getting more and more popular in the US, which is good, and we're doing it without having to spend money. Max is just leveling up by trying to make life better for the people of Mexico. And then what we're doing is we're rolling... We could roll a 28% chance if we're willing to burn all of our influence on it. But let's wait one more turn in terms of influence. For the moment, we're just going to roll the 6 and 7, like small chances that we get something out of it. We're not going to take Kazakhstan out of the union with Russia because we don't want Kazakhstan to be invaded. So we're going to take them out of the union once we control the United States, because then we can ally Kazakhstan to the United States, which will deter. The AI is smart enough to be deterred by nuclear weapons and powerful militaries. So if you ally a country with, say, the United States or with the NATO countries or with China, no one's really going to invade you usually because they don't want to get nuked. So there we are. Also, we've got the resistance operating in Turkey, and looks like they're cracking down on the Academy. So the resistance looks like they're trying to form a sort of arc here, Turkey to Poland, and we'll see if eventually they use that to try and break into, say, Germany. And we have our first presence in France. It is Project Exodus. So Exodus has one position in Hungary and one in France. So unless we can... And we probably don't have the capacity to get in there. If we went in and we were able to grab France as well, we could start a foothold in the European Union. But I think getting the United States is probably more urgent, and it's going to take all of our cap anyway. We're going to have to dump a lot of our other countries just to make the US possible. So there we are. I'm going to run a few more turns, and we will be back. Okay, now this is a breakthrough. We've had our first hit on a control point takeover in the United States. So we've increased our popularity to 38%. We've secured 3 control points in Mexico and 3 in Canada, which is about the maximum level of border pressure you can put on the United States. Only if we had this one would it be more. So having started with a 1% chance to take over control points in the United States, I think we're now rolling dice at about... There you are. We're rolling at 36%, and we've rolled a couple of turns in a row, and now we're finally getting a hit. So we have taken over the financial sector of the United States. That gives us 14.6 funding a month, 0.375 boost, 1 mission control, and 83.3 science per month, which is about a third of our total science income. Not bad. And this is going to give us control of 1 United States Army as well. 1st Infantry Division comes with the financial sector. So that's a great way to start. So we've started breaking into the United States. We've controlled an army. So we now have 1st ID. They're based here, Minneapolis, at least in Terra Invicta. This is a tech level 4.5 army. Lovely picture of an Abrams and an Apache. It has a navy, so it can travel overseas. I'll talk more about armies and navies when we go to war, but the big benefit of the United States, like it's a big pile of research and resources. There's overall more resources to grab in the European Union, and in raw economic terms, there's more to grab in China. There's more potential in China, especially if you can upgrade and fix the things that are undertuned with China. But America's got the military power, and those resources are already developed at game start. So we're going to go with a military first sort of playthrough, which I think matches with the humanity first idea. We're going to keep campaigning in the United States. The more popular we get, the easier it'll be to reinforce success. We can roll 36, we can roll up to 58%. Someone is at my door. Okay, so our strategy of spamming is getting us there. We were at 51%, we rolled a 0 on that one, so critical success. We now have 47% popularity in the United States. Failed our second roll, but that's okay. Spam is basically our strategy to get there, and now we're at the point where we have assumed 2 US divisions, and we are very, 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 very slightly over our control point cap. Now, there's some critical decision making to get here. Going over this cap too far is bad. We're not going to get a boost until we finish clandestine cells, which will let us get another counselor, which will let us boost this cap, because this cap is influenced by the admin, the command, and the persuasion of your various counselors. So Max here having 5 command and 0 admin and 3 persuasion, he's helping a little bit, you know? So we'll get a little bit of a boost, and if we level our counselors slightly, we'll get a boost as well. Although really what I want to be leveling early is usually administration. We just can't afford the organizations. So we will be able to raise this cap, but not by a huge amount. At some point we're going to have to abandon Mexico, because abandoning Mexico's points lets us afford basically these 3 points in Mexico are worth maybe 1.5 points in the United States. Then if we eventually abandon Canada, we can afford even more US control points, with the big goal being control all of the United States, and then focus on fixing the US economy. Again, I don't want to build nuclear weapons. I'll fix this later. And I'll turn off spoils. So I really want to optimize the United States and use it as the basis of humanity first power, because if they're going to be a country that kicks the aliens out of our solar system or whatever, then it's going to be the US of A. The problem is going to be affording it without going way over this cap, because not only does going over it cost you influence per month, it makes you more vulnerable to certain mission types, but abandoning Mexico or Canada or Kazakhstan early, especially Mexico or Canada, reduces the bonuses that we're getting when we're trying to control points in the United States. Because you can see here, control points in neighbors is giving us plus 5.1. It's huge. So when Vincinar does his calc, it's the equivalent. It's the equivalent of pushing his. If we abandon all of the neighbors, spending 16 influence, we'd actually be at 15% success chance rather than 53, which is not great. So you want to take over as much, overshoot past your control point limit, and then start abandoning once you're sufficiently dug in. Our next one is corporations, which is a good option, and then mass media. Mass media gives us a bonus to public campaigning, which is something that would be really useful. So what we might do is try and shoot for 2 control points right now, with a decent amount of investment in them.
Acknowledged. Ready.
Something like that, 250% chances. Try and get both, 25% chance that we get both, and then immediately start abandoning nations, and then crawl our way through Congress and the executive. That's probably the best option we have available to us. I'm going to keep stabilizing the US, bringing this unrest level down, because optimizing the US economy is just critical to us. Anyway, that's the plan at the moment. I'm basically ignoring, I'm not trying to block anyone else, I'm not trying to interfere with anyone's counselors, I'm just devoting 100% of my attention and efforts to trying to secure the United States for humanity first, for the big red hand. Anyway, that's the plan. I'll be back in a moment. All it took was me spending every turn and action from the start of the game till now, spamming, failing a lot, failing a majority of the time, but we're now in control of the US. There are other problems associated with this. We are horrifically over our control point limit because the United States is a behemoth. We have 0 influence and a monthly income of negative 956.8. Our annual income is negative 11,000 influence. So the only way to get around this is we now have to hit abandon nation on Mexico, brings us down to 216 of 146. Hit abandon nation on Canada, brings us down to 179 of 146. Unfortunately, we're probably going to have to abandon Kazakhstan as well. I would have liked to pull it out of the Eurasian Union, but in the end we just didn't have time to accomplish that. And it would have been really difficult to get to invade it with the United States anyway, so we are going to abandon Kazakhstan, and that brings us down to a still bad 163 over 146. That's going to get a little bit better if we get a counselor, but we now have plus 20 monthly income. It's not much, but it's something. And we now have the United States operating in our favor. So we now have access to, the big guy in the game. So we should get access to the rest of the US military shortly. There we are, 3rd ID, 2nd ID. I believe one of them is stationed in Korea at game start. 2nd Infantry Division, there we are. Its home base is Seattle. We will airlift it home. Basically, nations pay upkeep on armies, and they pay less upkeep if the army is in its home province. In terms of these things, development points. So there we are. That's our opening. We're overextended, but we have a solution for fixing this overextension coming along in just a few weeks. Just a few weeks, we'll be able to recruit another councillor, which should give us about a +10 boost here, and make this manageable. If we then do another research on control points, level some people up, I think we'll be able to just manage to do this within our cap. We'll have the US, we will have nothing else, but we will have the USA. And the USA will generate us an ungodly amount of, our monthly science income's up to 576. It'll make us money, it'll make us science, it's given us 6 mission control, it has a boost income. Admittedly, if we had Kazakhstan, it would double our boost income, so I'd like to be able to get back there, but it's just too hard to do at the moment. And there we are. Let's have a quick look at where other nations are on the map just to close out. So we've got the servants based in the United Kingdom and a little bit of presence in Germany, although the academy is also there. France is contested. Italy is contested. Europe is just turning out to be a big point of contention. The academy is probably doing the best of anyone else on the map. For a long while there, until I got the US, they were doing better than me. They have full control of Japan, nearly full control of Korea, half control of Turkey, half control of Germany. Their economy should be really, really good. Servants are behind on the economy, but they've got most of the UK behind them, which is a good chunk of money, and they've got nuclear weapons. The initiative has lost North Korea, so now the Protectorate has Pakistan and North Korea. So that's a nice little nuclear-armed alliance, and they're also securing Southeast Asia. So this, to me, looks like, if they're putting pressure through Pakistan, Myanmar, Laos, and Vietnam, what that AI is clearly doing is trying to rack up control points bordering China, which means that they're going to want to get, just like we did, they're going to want to get all those neighboring bonuses and push into China. So can't wait to, well, I absolutely can wait. I'd rather it didn't happen. Protectorate pushing in potentially to the People's Republic of China. So that'll be interesting. Initiative, having been kicked out of those areas, now looks like it's going after some soft spots in South America and Africa. So full control of Brazil, partial control of Argentina, and full control of Peru. So South America is becoming initiative territory. What I can't see, which is unfortunate because they're sort of natural okay allies for us, is a big collection of resistance strongholds, just a little bit of a presence all over the place. So we'll see how that develops. That's probably a good place to cut episode 1. We're back in the game, we're explaining some concepts. I know I'm cutting a lot, but I'm trying not to repeat content from the demo. We've done our initial objective. Our initial objective was seize control of the United States. Next episode, what we're going to do is we're going to start optimizing the US economy in order to become the power base for our faction and start to spread out, hire another counselor, and start to have our wider geostrategic goals put into place. So that's what we're probably going to do next episode. But bloody hell, this is exciting. We're back in Terra Invicta. It's patched, it's upgraded. The AI is hunting for options for power bases and expanding very, very well, which is very, very exciting in of itself. The balance changes to the game have made it more difficult, but I think in a good way. I just hopefully this America First strategy ends up getting validated as we go forward, because I haven't tested it before. It's been great having you with me. I hope you're enjoying it. I'll see you again next episode. I'll try and release these pretty quickly in the lead up to early access release on the 26th, so expect to hear from me again soon.